Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are throwing out a deck profile for the new Labrynth archetype. I am very excited for this archetype. It has layer synergy, but even if I don't, or you don't want to play a layer build, I'm going to start here with a more pure variant. It's more pure, not entirely pure, but there's a couple of interesting techs I'm messing around with here. Just to start off with the deck, I mean, it is super early, so this is obviously not refined, obviously not super tested, but the deck is crazy. I think a lot of people fall into this same camp that I did, which is when we read these cards initially, you were like, okay, there's definitely some good cards. You got a Stratos, you got like a Scarlet Sanguine type of trap card, a solid boss monster in Silver Castle. But I'm not sure it's as cohesive enough as we really need it. But lo and behold, when you actually mess around with this deck, especially going first, it is much more powerful than I initially anticipated as a pure deck. Which is awesome. So we don't get a lot of really strong trap decks consistently in the game, so I'm happy we have one here, and the artwork's insane. Layer synergy, what more could I want? So this is my more pure variant out the gate, and obviously this will change as time goes on, but this is a good place to start. So getting started here with our monster lineup, we obviously start with our boss monster, Labrynth of the Silver Castle, as well as one Labrynth Archfiend. He's kind of like a boss monster as well, not quite as good, but I still think he's nice to play at 1. Maybe down the line we'll figure out that it's just not even worth playing him at 1. You just want the Silver Castle, but for now I'm messing around with them. I know they're bricks, but there aren't really a ton of real bricks in the deck, because you can just pitch everything off of Stove and the Chandra, which is really cool. Then you get to the I guess technically your normal summon lineup. We've got double Ariane, triple Ariana, and double Lilith, Lady of Lament. These are technically your normal summons here. I don't love Ariane at 3. She is technically a -1, but she does cool plays. Like I'm not trying to, I mean, like, she can lead to breaking even, but I do think like she's cool. I like her a lot, but if she gets hand trapped, it can be really annoying. Like, it's already setting you back a card, and unless the rest of your hand is like pretty defensive, you can just kind of be stuck right then and there. So we don't want that to happen. But I like her a lot, and I'm trying to like find that healthy medium of just kind of finding the right ratio. I don't want to draw even 2, but especially not 3 of these. So I'm trying to keep that number respectable. The really cool play with Lilith, though, is that you can summon her off of Ariane, then tribute either herself or Ariane to like get into other cards, other traps that you want to get access to, which is really cool. So yeah, really, really sweet. And then Ariana just being a Stratos for the deck is awesome. And their second effect is so cool. We want to leave these up on the field during our opponent's turn, because we are going to just plus again anyway. Because if you remove any monster from the field with a normal traps effect, you're going to draw a card and then potentially be able to summon a fiend or set another spell trap from hand, which is just really strong. Both of them have that. So sometimes just going Ariane into Ariana, get a search there, and then passing one disruptive card literally gets you like 2 more draws, which is insane. That's how the deck wins. You just out-research your opponent like crazy. And then Lilith obviously being there for just getting you into your traps. Really cool. We get to Absolute King, Backjack, and Skarm. These are kind of your send targets, your Foolish Burial targets with the Archfiend glitch. I am messing around with that here. I think it's possible in the future we just decide that like Dogmatica Punishment or something else trap-wise just ends up being more optimal than this card, but I really like it. I mean, it just feels like, honestly, like a power creep to Fiend Griefing, right? Fiend Griefing's interruption effect always felt like a little bit lacking, but this is just straight up a Trident that you can activate whenever, as long as you have a Fiend on the field, which this deck does very easily, and then send something else. You can either send a Skarm to get yourself, or Skarm to get yourself a follow-up on the next turn, which can be either your Lilith or a, not Stove, but a Chandra, which is really cool. Or you can send Backjack, and Backjack will have a very high chance of hitting any of these trap cards to get you an additional eruption on the opponent's turn. Also, drawing these is not that bad, because as we move to the next cards, triple Chandra and triple Stove, really cool. These pretty much can send themselves from hand or field and discard a card to set any Labrynth spell or trap straight from the deck. And then they float back to your hand if any monster leaves the field by normal trap effect. So really, really good at just like kind of getting you to the piece you need. Ideally, you want to be getting to at least Welcome Labrynth and the field spell. So if you have one, you can use these to search the other, and then they all float. Like, that's the whole thing, is like, it looks like you went -1, but at the end of the day, as long as you can resolve any removal trap or any removal card to just like remove something, you're then going to get like super plus, right? You're getting draw here, draw here. Use this card to destroy a card in your opponent's hand. That's what makes this card like, this card's crazy. And then like Chandra and Stove, if they're engraved, are adding themselves back to hand. You get so much value off of this. It's insane. So really good. After that, we move to Gamma. I think this is cool in this list. I think depends on the kind of list you play, but I do like Gamma here because one, if you don't draw a normal summon, you're not summoning anything turn one usually. So we can just pass by setting a bunch of back row and activating the field spell or whatever. And then if our opponent tries to like Ash our Labrynth, which can be very brutal, the welcome Labrynth, because you kind of need the Scarlet Sanguine card to resolve. Gamma becomes huge, as well as we're playing Extravagance down here, so that's always ash bait as well. So Gamma is actually really useful in the deck, I think. And also, again, we've got 6 cards that just discard anything and they come back. So the drawing these is like not the worst if they're dead, because you can just use these to kind of pitch it some way, which is cool. Then we get to the field spell. I'm only playing 2. I know some people mess around with 3. You do really want to see it, but we've got 3 cards that search it, 6 cards that search it, 2 hard copies, which is 8. You've got triple Ariana, which is 11, double Ariane, which gets us 2 Ariana, so that could arguably be 13. And like technically welcome, it's slow, but you can go welcome into Ariana on the opponent's turn, and then Ariana search welcome Labrynth for the next turn. So you have so many ways, and Extravagance is drawing you and stuff, so it is very, very easy to get to this card. I just want the second copy so that if the first one gets popped, we have a second copy in the deck to potentially search. Triple Extravagance, I love this card in the deck. You could definitely play Prosperity here if you're more worried about seeing specific cards, but it's not like we play a ton of bricks. You're almost okay with drawing anything except for these 2. And I guess you don't want to draw the driver or the game. You don't really want to draw these because you want to have these before you have to activate Extrav, but it's not the end of the world. We're still, even if we draw 1 card that's usable, it's still pretty good, and it's probably discard fodder for either of these guys. But just really cool, really powerful, baits hand traps before you have to commit anything else to the field, which we love, and we'll take that for sure. So that's it. Not a ton for spells, keeping it really small with the spells. And that brings us to our trap lineup, definitely where the deck gets its interruption from. Triple Welcome Labrynth, just Scarlet Sanguine summons the Labrynth straight out of the deck, and it can reset itself to the field when any monster is removed by a normal trap. I do play one of the other ones as well. We have Fair Welcome, which is if any monster declares an attack while you control a fiend, you can target a card on the field, negate the attack, and if you do, destroy that target. Then set a non-Labrynth normal trap directly from your hand or deck. So this pulls any of your other traps straight out of the deck. Really cool. It's a little specific, but I do like that they kind of like worked around it and said, you know what, this is any monster. So even if it's slow, being able to get access to this later on in the duel, like Archfiend can actually set this for free. Which means you just have to attack once, and then this card becomes live to just get you any other trap from the deck and pop a card, which is cool. Just super searchable. We also have Labrynth Barrage, also a really cool card, because if you activate a set normal trap card, this card can just copy that effect and do it again, which is really cool. So like double Ice Dragon's Prison is insane, double Compulse insane, double Glitch, oh my gosh, like pop 2 cards, send Backjack and Scarm, like I'm sick. Like there's some really cool applications for this card, and it's a one-off searchable for the situation it's going to be really good in, and definitely appreciate that. Speaking of which, we do play some generic traps that do trigger these effects, right? Just generic traps that remove a monster from the field is all we're looking for. Compulse is probably generically the best one. Not as powerful as all the rest, but it doesn't have any qualification. It can just be activated at any point, bouncing any monster. Sometimes even bouncing your own stuff can be good, because a lot of these effects trigger if any monster is moved from the field by traps. So bouncing your own monster just to like maybe load an Ariana back into your hand and then get like 3 pluses from other cards engraven on field, and then have Ariana loaded up for next turn. Can be really good. It's just so flexible and not once per turn, so I really like it. Triple Imperm, this adds to the ability to go second a little bit. I think for a trap deck, having triple Gamma, triple Imperm, and the synergy being good is good enough for me. I'm not going to expect this deck to be a juggernaut going second, but I think this is a pretty good middle ground where it's not like it's not going back on what the deck is too much, but it is just enough to help the deck like win some duels going second for sure. Double Ice Dragon's Prison. You have to play this in some quantity. You could play 3 of this. I'm just on 2 because Sometimes this card just isn't all that, especially in certain matchups, but in certain matchups it is really good. So I do want to have it, and then playing the one trap trick helps us get it a little bit extra, you know, like it was a 3 of. And then our final card here, Archfiend Glitch, for the normal traps, aside from Trap Trick, is really cool. I wanted to try and take advantage of this card because it is new, and I do think it's really strong. I mean, just being Dryden and then Foolish Burialing any Fiend is just so huge. So Backjack and Scarm getting us insane value, whether it's follow-up, whether it's an extra interruption, and stacking our deck to potentially find, you know, a guaranteed good draw off the top is really sweet. So we're on 43. I did find that in trying to build for this deck, it is hard to get this deck down to 40. There's just so many cards I want to play, and especially because the deck is early and just recently came out, there's no perfected method yet. So maybe once it becomes a little bit more solved, the deck, like maybe some cards are super cuttable. Maybe the Gamma package isn't fully optimal and there's better stuff we can do. Who knows, right? It's definitely stuff we'll figure out down the line, but 43 is pretty good. And because there's so many consistency cards, Lilith's getting you to welcome Labyrinth, right? Between having both these other normal summons, really sweet. The fact that Chandra and Stove are searching you all of your welcome Labyrinth and stuff is just so huge. Like, honestly, the deck's actually pretty consistent, so I like it a lot. So that's it for the main deck. Moving into the extra, you really don't go into the extra that much, hence the extravagance, but your deck does lock you into Fiends. I think it's Welcome Labyrinth, so you're using this on your opponent's turn. It's locking you into Fiend monsters. Yeah, until the end of the next turn. So even you use this on the opponent's turn until the end of your next turn, you're still locked into Fiends. So you have to kind of keep it pretty Fiend. I do have Dark in here for the situations where you're not locked. Your deck is like almost entirely Dark, so it is pretty easy to just make this and like revive a DPE from your opponent's grave or something and kind of handle their business. Underworld Goddess, she is a Fiend, and this deck actually can put a lot of monsters on the field, so this could be the out to a Towers, and we know how trap decks can definitely struggle with Towers type monsters, so I do think this is probably at least a one-off in most Labyrinth builds, just to have that potential out in that situation. Then you have Unchained Abomination, Nightmare Griffin, Nightmare Unicorn, Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Cerberus. You might want to be playing like 2 Phoenix, 2 Unicorn, because those are going to come up a little more often if you are playing Extrav. I just want to show you all the options here because you're not going to use this very much. There for rank 4s, because we do go like Ariane into Ariana, right? And then be able to capitalize from there. So Baguska Fiend, Roach Fiend. In certain matchups, Roach is insane. Exciton Knight, actually not bad, gives us a decent little option going second. Evil Swarm Nightmare, pretty good. Double Book of Moon, also pretty strong, like the Roach. Rhapsody in Berserk, this card's particularly cool because he can handle a DP. If your opponent's already used a DP and he's in grave and you can just get to this guy, you just use him to banish the DP from grave, which, you know, could be worse for sure. And then the Zeus. The Zeus ideally would be like if I go Exciton Knight off of Ariane into Ariana, and then we make this and our opponent like imperms it or has like a negate that doesn't remove it, we could then theoretically go attack in the battle phase. So you don't lose your battle phase, right? You just can't deal any damage. Yeah, your opponent just doesn't take damage. You just have to battle. Then you can just make Zeus and potentially clear the board. I don't expect it to be great, but it's theoretically something we could do. And the last 2 cards are just Gamma targets. I think Chaos Ruler is pretty cool because it helps us dig for like Stove or Chandra. Maybe even Gamma's not great, ideally, because you already have a monster on field. But you could even dig for a normal summon if you have not had a normal summon yet. So that's pretty cool. And then he comes back as a beater as well, which is fun. But you have to get a light. I think you have to get a light in grave, so you would have to get like Gamma or something. But Omega is just ideally the best, right? If I go Extrav, my opponent tries to Ash and I can Gamma, I mean, we're drawing 2 and we're just going to rip another card out of our opponent's hand. Then we're going to probably on their turn make Silver Castle and use her to take another card out of the hand. Really, really strong there. But that's it for the extra. There's not a ton of options there, to be honest, but that's not... Whoa, what just happened? Hold on, get back up here. Still going, okay. That was really weird. I didn't even hit anything. Okay. here we go for showing off the side deck. I mean, it's something, this isn't a real side. There's just a couple of other options to consider potentially for the build. Some interesting stuff that you can mess around with. This is the other card that's kind of like your Chandra and your Stove. It doesn't, it's a straight up like minus. This card doesn't get you another card. It lets you activate a normal trap the turn it was sent though. Fine. You know, it's just not super searchable like the other ones are, a little more searchable, but just to me. Labyrinth settings are really interesting because it can target 2 Labyrinth spells and traps that are banished or engraved, shuffle them into the deck, then if you control a fiend, you can set non-Labyrinth normal traps from deck equal to the number of cards you shuffled. So shuffle 2 back, set any 2 normal traps straight from the deck is just like game. Like if that resolves, it's game. So this could potentially just be a cool one-of that is pretty searchable off of like Chandra, Stove after you've played the game a little bit. Same thing with Ariana, like it's just super searchable. Maybe it's a one-off, but it is a brick early in the game. So, you know, you got to consider that. Then we have Tour Guide. Tour Guide potentially getting out Chandra or Stove or Lilith or Backjack or Skarm. It's fine. I don't think it, I just don't think it really works, particularly with what the deck wants to do. Alice is really interesting because the idea here was there would be a specific play where you go Ariane special Lilith straight from the deck. Lilith tribute itself for a trap, and that trap would probably be glitch in this situation. Then on our opponent's turn, if we're able to glitch, right, popping a card to then send your Skarm. Skarm can then and then so don't forget, Ariane's going to draw you a card because you pop something with glitch. Then Skarm's going to add you Alice for follow-up on the opponent's end phase, and then you go normal Alice, reborn the Lilith Engrave, so that's a 2000 beater, just coming back to the board. Lilith tribute the Alice to get another trap, and if you want, you can keep extending by using like Ariane to send the trap you just got, which means you wouldn't even have to rely on still having other traps elsewhere. That's already getting you another trap, and then getting another summon. Maybe you go into Ariana. Ariana gets you another search for a welcome Labyrinth, and then you just keep stockpiling advantage like it's nobody's business. And you, when you tributed the Alice, you're also searching for your second Lilith for more follow-up on later turns. So you just run away with advantage. I do think there's an argument to play one of it, but we don't play anything else other than Lilith to tribute it. So it's a very specifically useful for that play. And aside from that play, it's just like not as, it's just like a super brick, which you don't really want. So interesting card, just not fully with it, I think, all the way. From there, you know, Arima and Lair, if you want to go into like a more like combined build with the two, I definitely want to mess around with stuff like that. But I think until I, you know, get to that point and like feel really confident with it, I don't want to like go too hard on that. We'll mess around with that later. Lost Wind is particularly interesting because sending it off of Ariane is really cool because it's loaded engraved and it'll come back eventually when your opponent tries to go into the extra deck. So just getting some value off of sending for Ariane's effect is really cool. Punishment definitely at some point could replace glitch, and if you replace glitch, you probably don't have to play Backjack or Skarm anymore. So definitely takes away some pseudo bricks in the deck, while also just being like an insanely powerful card. We also have tons of space in the extra, so you can play triple Intes and all the other stuff if you want. Definitely something to consider. The artifact package, keep an eye on this specifically for the ban list. There's definitely a real possibility that's like Scythe is banned by the time we get like these cards and we've gotten the next ban list. So we might not even be able to play these, but I think for right now, it's, you know, the deck searches normal traps pretty easily. So you could just play like 1 or 2 copies of the Sanctum just so that like Lilith can resolve into that pretty easily, and it just, that's the most powerful thing you can do with an old trap, like just straight up, is summon Scythe. So really good. Solemn Strike. The Psalms are interesting. Maybe I'd think about siding triple Judgment, but I think Strike, I think what's cool about Strike is it does cover some of what the deck doesn't already do, which is just like straight up negate and destroy monsters. We have Imperm to negate something on field but not destroy it, and then we just have a ton of removal. And so this does kind of cover a potential gap in the way you can interrupt your opponent, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really help consistency at all. So I do think it's like cool and it like covers some bases, but like the deck loses consistency if you play this card. So yeah. And then you finish up with some hand traps. The idea with these hand traps specifically is like if you're ending with Ariane and Ariana on field and you're disrupting your opponent, you're drawing 1 to 2 cards on your opponent's turn almost every time if you're going first. And so it'd be cool to have a couple of cards in the deck that like on draw become additional interruptions. We don't really play any of those in the main right now, but maybe that's something you can mess around with, swapping maybe for the Gamma package or something to be a little more flexible that way. And also we have Token Collector. This is another thing that's like really, really spicy, especially against like a Sword Soul deck. Being able to go like into a glitch play, pop a card they have, and then send Token Collector. I mean, they just scoop. We already talked about how Token Collector sometimes by itself makes them scoop. But now they have to deal with a Dryden that gets you Token Collector, and that's just 1 interruption. Like that's just 1 interruption gets you both of those. Like insane in that matchup, just absolutely bonkers. So definitely keep an eye on that for sure. But yeah, really, really cool deck. Hopefully this gave you a good scope of like what to maybe expect, what to mess around with, a good place to start. Obviously feel free to adjust for what you want as a duelist if you're going to test it prior. And then I really can't wait for this archetype to come out. This is one I'm way, way excited for, more so than usual. So really, really cool. That's going to do it for me today, guys, though. Sorry if I went a little long, but let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section below. And definitely subscribe to the channel if you have not yet and you want to see more stuff from your boy down the line. Peace.